Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Hebrew's weekly reading of the first three verses of each week's Torah reading. This week's Torah reading is Exodus chapter 27, verse 20 through chapter 30, verse 10. Parashat TETZAVEH. Beginning on the first verse of this week's Torah reading, chapter 27, verse 20. Follow me in the transliteration or in the Hebrew if you're already comfortable with the letters. Bear in mind, the little accent symbols over certain vowels indicate which vowels in the word are accented. That's like the difference between saying attribute and attribute. Okay, and we are also now providing a transliteration where the accented syllable is also in all caps and bolded, so it should be very clear which part of a word you will accent and which you should not. Let's begin. وَأَتَّى وَأَتَّى تَصَوَّى تَصَوَّى أَثْ أَثْ بني بني إسرائيل إسرائيل ويقحو ويقحو إلاخا إلاخا شاما شاما زايث زايث زخر زخر كثيف كثيف لما لما لها علف لها علف نير نير تميز تميز. We'll do it one more time in the Hebrew letters, going from right to left. وأتى وأتى تصوى تصوى أثبني إسرائيل إسرائيل ويقحو ويقحو إلاخا إلاخا شاما شاما زايث زايث شاما زايث زاخ زاخ كثيف كثيف لما لما لها علف لها علف نير نير لها علف نير تميز تميز. Now we'll read through it one more time at a somewhat more natural pace. وأتى تصوى بني إسرائيل ويقحو إلاخا شاما زايث زخ كثيف لما لها على نير تميز. Pasuk Haba. When you're ready to go to the next verse, you can tell yourself Pasuk Haba, next verse, chapter 27, verse 21. بأهل بأهل معذ معذ ميحوس ميحوس. An H with a dot under it indicates the letter Het as opposed to the letter He. Het is more similar in classical Hebrew to the letter He than it is to the letter Chaf, despite popular mainstream pronunciation of modern Hebrew. Do not mistake modern Hebrew for classical Hebrew. They are indeed the same language, but different registers of the same language. So it's the same way that the King James Version of the Bible or Shakespeare is definitely English. It's not that modern English is not the same language, but King James type English, Shakespearean type English, these are different types of English, not to be confused with modern English. If that's the true with fairly recent literature, all the more so with the difference between modern Hebrew and biblical Hebrew. Okay. But do not let anyone mislead you into thinking they are different languages. That is anti-Jewish propaganda. Anyone who is truly familiar with biblical Hebrew and conversant in modern Hebrew knows full well that they are, in fact, the same language with some differences, especially in pronunciation of certain guttural letters. Let's continue. Mihus, mihus, la porecheth, la porecheth, asher, asher, al, al. This is with an ayin, not an aleph. So make sure to learn to differentiate between the letter aleph and the letter ayin. Al, ha, ezuth, ha, ezuth. Ya, arech, ya, arech. Earther, earther. Aharon, Aharon. Uvano, Uvano. معرب معرب عذ عذ باقر باقر لفنا لفنا أذنوي أذنوي حقاف حقاف علام علام ذا رثام ذا رثام مئث I'm sorry مئث مئث. The only downside that I can see to emphasizing the accented syllables with bold is that there's no longer clear indication of where ayin is in the transliteration as opposed to an aleph's guttural uh, uh, glottal stop. So that is the cause for my error. It's difficult to toggle between the Hebrew and the transliteration while I'm reading. So pardon me, but there is a Hebrew word eth with an aleph, and there's also an eth with an ayin, meaning two different words, and both would be possible. But this is with an aleph. Me'eth, me'eth, from with. Bene, bene, Yisrael, Yisrael. All right, let's read it in the Hebrew. بأهل بأهل موعد موعد بأهل موعد ميحوس ميحوس لا بورخث لا بورخث ميحوس لا بورخث أشار أشار عل عل ها عذوث ها عذوث عل ها عذوث يا عرخ يا عرخ أثر أثر يا عرخ أثر أهرن أهرن وفنو وفنو معارف معارف عذ بقر عذ بقر لفنا لفنا أذنوي أذنوي لفنا أذنوي حقاث حقاث علام علام حقاث علام لذير ثام لذير ثام مئث مئث بني بني إسرائيل إسرائيل بني إسرائيل. Let's read it again at a more natural pace. هالموعظ ميحوس لبورخث أشر علها عذوث يا عرخث آهرن وبنو معارب عبقر لفنا أذنوي حقث علم نذير ثوم مئث بني إسرائيل. Pasuk haba, next verse. Pasuk haba. وأتا وأتا أقرب أقرب إلاخا إلاخا أث أث آهرن آهرن أحيخا أحيخا وإث وإث بنو بنو إته إته ميتر ميتر بني بني إسرائيل إسرائيل לך הנה לך הנה לי לי أهرن أهرن نضاب نضاب وأبيه وأبيه العزار العزار وإيثمار وإيثمار. This should be capitalized here, but we still see the indication that it is accented by the accent syllables. I will correct that in the PDF file. وإيثمار بني بني أهرن أهرن. Let's read it now in the Hebrew. وأتى أقرب إلى خائف أهرن حيخا وأثبان إيتا ميتخ بني إسرائيل لخاهن لي أهرن نضب وأبيه العزار وإيثمر بني أهرن. Right. Let's look at the key words. Please bear in mind, I am not an authority on the ta'amim. I'm aware of a mistake I just made. And also, generally, I am not the most expert on the ta'amim, the cantillation marks. I am very familiar with the three main types. So there's much more than just three types of cantillation marks, but there are three main categories I'm familiar with, which are the most important thing to know. But the purpose of these online video classes is to enable the average individual to master the accurate and classical pronunciation of the consonants and the vowels and know which part of a word to accent. As far as the musical element, that is not the main focus of these lessons. And indeed, there's a good bit of variation in the musical traditions of the different Jewish communities, but there's much more consensus with which part of words should be accented, and much more consensus among scholars and academics as to the more historical pronunciation of the consonants of the Hebrew alphabet. Right, so that is the main focus of these lessons. All right, for this week's 5 keywords from the first 3 verses of this week's Torah reading. Number 1, ner. Ner is a lamp, commonly translated as candle, but technically anything with a wick for controlled flame would be a ner. And historically, it wasn't typically a candle, but a candle does qualify as a type of ner. All right, number 2, tamid. Tamid means continual, like the ner tamid, the continually burning lamp. It's the standard word for always in modern Hebrew. It can also be translated as perpetual or perpetually. Number 3, ulam. Ulam, like in the term huqaf ulam, an everlasting statute. Ulam means everlasting. In some contexts, it could also be translated as world or universe. It's from a root word meaning hidden and refers to, and this is my own wording, kind of drawing the connection between the word ulam's usage as everlasting and its usage as world. I kind of try to encapsulate the connection between these two by defining it as a word that refers to the greatest conceivable extent or beyond, such as everlasting or world. That is the commonality in those two words. I would say also in English, or universe, rather. Number 4, parochet. Parochet. Parochet is the curtain barrier that separated between the Holy of Holies and the rest of the temple in the national temple or in the tabernacle in the desert. Same basic setup. And it is distinct from other types of curtains. So the parochet is also the same term that is used to refer to the curtain that hangs on the ark where the Torah is kept in synagogues. And many scholars believe it originates from an Akkadian word that essentially means blockade. Right, so that's how it's different from other curtains. It is a curtain, but it functions as a partition blocking access to a certain area or marking a restriction of such sort. Number 5, Lachahana. Lachahana means to make him a minister, referring to Aaron, and then in reference to his descendants. And this is the same root as the word Kohen, which people are pretty familiar with, which refers to Aaron, the brother of Moses, and his descendants, his the those who patrilineally descend from Aaron, brother of Moses, and they're inheriting the covenant between Aaron, his patrilineal descendants, and God to be the official and the only authorized administrators of the temple sacrifices. Okay, so in that sense, they are Kohanim. The term Kohen can be used in a more broad sense as well, but usually it's used in the sense of religious administration, what is commonly referred to as a priest in English, right? It's from a root meaning to serve as administrator or to administrate. That concludes it for this week's reading of the first 3 verses of this week's Torah reading. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Let's hear all your questions, any questions you have, any criticism, constructive criticism, of course, preferred. And make sure to like and follow and support us on Patreon /Authentic Torah if you like these videos and would like more quality videos or more content similar to this. All the best. Shalom uvracha. Shabbat shalom.